Welcome back. This is Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Keno Manwar is a lawyer, joins us this morning here on the broadcast. Melvin Thogo is as well a lawyer. Tabitha Ogutu is governance commentator. Ivy Mushoki is the East African Community Coordinator for the Global Youth Parliament. Thank you for staying with us, gentlemen and ladies. Yes, Melvin, I was on you. Given the voices that required, are you confident in Parliament?
I am not confident in the current Parliament. And I think in our history as a country, and especially post-2010 Constitution, we are going to remember the 13th Parliament as that toothless dog, and probably a very... We're going to remember a group of people who didn't have any principles, who did not come here with any ideologies, but rather they came as followers to somebody. They came as followers to the president. They did not understand the mandate. They did not understand what they were going to do in Parliament. And so what we keep seeing every day is people serving us with a lot of nonsense, a lot of nothing. I do not think that Parliament has achieved anything that it was supposed to achieve for the people of Kenya. Look at every legislation that has been done in the last 2 years. It's been nefarious. It's been to protect the political class. It's been to protect the ideologies of the ruling class, but they have not done anything that you'd say has improved or has made Kenya better. And that's why I know for sure that I'm not the only one who's not confident in this Parliament, because they have failed, for lack of a better word.
What can you do then as the alternative? And then doesn't that raise the fears that you have expressed of parliamentarians warming up to anyone at State House, taking the messaging as it is? No interrogation, no examination, no critical thinking, no serious thoughts. What then would a parliament full of young Kenyans do to hold the executive in check as required, or take after those who are currently in parliament?
I think our parliamentarians need to go back to the drawing board and ask themselves how they got there in the first place. I know we've had sentiments from them saying that, you know, yes, you elected me, but you elected me because of this particular party. And what they need to know is, where do they derive their power? Their power does not come from the president. The president only voted for one MP. Their power comes from the people. The people who sent you there are the people back at home, your constituents, your members in the counties. And these are the people that sent you there to work. The ideologies that you would be advancing and advocating for there are for the people back at home. And that means that an MP coming from Nakuru East does not have to have the same ideologies or advancing the same objectives as the one in Nairobi County. And the fear, I understand sometimes it's also the fear of intimidation, because, I mean, State House has all the power. It's concentrated there. And what they need to know is, even with that, when you come back to us, as long as you've done the work for us, we will still elect you. You need to fear the people more than you fear the authority back there. And the other thing that we need to do as a country and alternative voices is, we also need to go back to the political parties. Personally, I think the idea of political parties, the idea of grouping and regrouping is a noble one. But we need to know, from these parties stem the leaders that we have in Parliament. So what kind of leaders, what alternatives are we giving the people that we are sending there? And we do not, let's make the incumbents feel that we have the power, and that is by voting them out. You do not send somebody there to do what they're doing and then you bring them back. In fact, even when they're performing, we should have, at least the people should know that you don't have to keep on electing them. We have people who've been there for decades, and that's why they no longer feel the need to listen to the people, because they think we arrived and we are going to keep on being here. Another thing is the movement is cultivating leaders. I need us to support these leaders. If we do not support these leaders, they are going to be supported by politicians, the same people in Parliament today. So whether those people come back or not, they are going to come back as proxies in the name of the people that we are cultivating today. So we need to know, and we also need to know when I'm electing somebody, is it because of a token? Is it because I have interrogated what they're bringing, and that is what I also stand for? And the young people, I am sure all the political parties have youth leagues and, you know, and the demographics that the young people, women, and, you know, and the youth. And what these people need to bring are alternative voices. We cannot be in political parties and we feel like visitors. It is unfair that you're going there, but you cannot raise your voices because the bigwigs have spoken.
Okay.
And if we call for a complete overhaul of these systems, then we might have a change at the parliament.
Yeah. And Ivy, how can that overhaul happen? I mean, the beauty about our constitution is we are granted elections after every 5 years, sorted. There should be a voter registration exercise, must be in continuity. It is sorted. IEBC wasn't constituted as required. Now there is a panel to bring on new commissioners in under 90 days. How then can this process be of interest to you, young Kenyans, register and take part in the elections, not what we witnessed in 2022?
Thank you so much, Ayub, for that. I'm just trying to remember all the occurrences that have happened in the past few months from June 25th. And I'm trying to ask myself, the young people have been crying for accountability of everything. How can we have accountability of the jobs? How can we have accountability of SHIF? And it all narrows down to legitimacy, regime legitimacy. And how is it that is this regime helping the young people of our society today? And I want to maybe take some notes from my brother here, Okili Keno, and actually instigate the point that we actually need a parliamentary system, if you think about it. It's a reformative kind of system that will enable to engage young people to be accountable. They'll be able to actually know what has been done wrong. How can we be able to correct the wrongs that were already made? So, you know, we're looking for alternatives right now. We're not looking for chaos. We've moved from the chaos, now we're moving into the alternative. And the alternative to me seems that we need a system that works for us, a system that actually we can be accountable to. And that would mean reviewing the Constitution, making the Constitution work for us. Because remember, it was already remade in 2010, but it's not us who made it. Yet we are the ones who are now the Gen Zs. We are the ones who are coming up with the AI. We are the meta world, the metaverse. I mean, these things need to be enshrined in the Constitution. So we need to help to reinvent a Constitution that works for us. And I think that's one of my takeaways for today.
And then how then do you prepare? Because in the end, Melvin pointed out a very important point. But the very same president, in our context, the head of state, yes, has significant political power that he wields as the commander-in-chief, but is subject to impeachment through parliament because the people have invested that power in our representatives. They have fallen short. How then will parliamentary system address that? Do you mean then that we have a shadow cabinet, ministers will be in parliament, you will have a prime minister who is the executive, and then have a ceremonial president? And how will that address the question of ethnicity and young people's involvement in governance?
I really like that question because the truth is we are in a multi-ethnic society. And I think this parliamentary system, if put into place, would give other communities a way in which to be part of a leader. So it doesn't need to necessarily just stay maybe to the mountain or maybe to the Kalenjins or to the what. It's actually now a rotational kind of system that can work for all communities. And I feel it's fair because at the end of the day, we are trying to look for, it's a democratic state. We need to all be free and fair. I believe those are the terms of democratic, right? So if we are able to incorporate this parliamentary system, I believe that all the tribes can be able to actually bring out a leader so that we can be able to see, are they really ready to actually take up the role of leadership? And we are also able to monitor them, to account them, to see, is it that this is the problem? Is it the tribe that's the problem? Is it the person themselves who is the problem? So we're able to actually analyze it through a lens if we give everybody a fair share and a fair chance. So I feel like this is something that needs to be considered, and it's actually one of the alternatives that we need to drive as the young people in this country.
Yes, Keno, you have been taking notes.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Proceed.
Yeah, because remember, governments are formed, and when governments are formed, they derive their just power from the people. And when governments are formed after deriving their just power from the people, it is to the ends of right to life, liberty, and protection of property. So when you find yourself as a government that has failed to reach these ends for the people, it becomes the responsibility of the people either to alter that government or abolish it altogether. And on the 25th of June, we tried to abolish the government. It failed. Now the next logical thing to do is how can we alter the government to be able to be alive to the realities and to the realities of the day. And I mean,
and the ballot?
Yes, that is the democratic thing to do in a democracy.
And the only way.
And the only way. The alternative, we all know what the alternative is. And maybe, Ayub, to bring to your attention, when you look at the state, the idea of the state, it's very confusing. When people talk of the state, they have the government in mind. But the state is not the government. And it's very important for us to have that distinction. When we have a state has 4 elements according to the Montevideo Convention of 1933. A state has a people, it has a government, it has a territory, and what we call sovereignty. So in Kenya today, we find ourselves in a situation where the state itself, we have the people part of the state are dissatisfied with the government part of the state. And now the government part of the state, under the government, which we look at it within the context of the Constitution, the government has what we call the national security, which is like the life of the state. So when the national security, which is the life of a state, and now you look at yourself, for instance, now, if anything is dangerous towards your life, against all odds, you'll say, in self-defense, I'll do the inevitable, just to protect yourself. And this is where the government finds itself. The national security, which is up to chapter 14 of the Constitution, which is the part of the government, part of the state, the national security calls for protection against any internal and external threats to this entity called the state. So when the government is protecting Kenya as a state, it's protecting even its people. When the government is protecting Kenya, it's protecting its territory and its sovereignty. So I think it's important that we exercise a lot of sobriety as we are seeking for alternatives. Should we say, for instance, as young people, we feel we need a new constitutional order. It has to be within the law, within the state, so that the idea of the nation state must always prevail, not individuals. Because when we confuse William Ruto to be the state, to be the government, I think we get it wrong. He is just an agent of the state who is coming and going. So I think as young people, it's very important as we are exercising alternative voices and the sobriety that is needed, we have to know that the life of the nation called Kenya is most important than any other person's individual interest. The people, they owe their government legitimacy for that government to be able to function for themselves. If the people give the government the legitimacy needed, the government, I want to believe, will be able to give the people and the state the enabling environment that is needed to be able to push this exercise in democracy called Kenya forward. So, and I believe that's the alternative that we need as a young people. Yes.
So both parties are restrained by the Constitution? Both
are restrained by the Constitution, but one has monopoly over the instruments of violence. And now, there's a political philosopher called Niccolo Machiavelli. He argues that do you expect someone who is armed to respect someone who is not armed? Now the question is, who is armed? Naturally, and if you look at the organs of national security, that is the whole essence of being armed. Some people argue that you don't recite poetry to somebody with a gun. If someone has a gun, it's no time for poetry.
And still then there are clear blue waters onto no violations on the part of those also who are wielding the instruments of power and instruments of violence. The government, to be clear, that it must exercise that power within the confines of the Constitution. And all the same, those instruments of power are paid for by the Kenyan people.
Absolutely.
So there should be then the much-needed balance of respect on both parts, and that's what continues the state. Then to my question now. The lamentations by Kenyans about our healthcare, education, our infrastructure, what then explains, including young people, when the opportunity presents itself at the ballot, these problems are forgotten. Then they suddenly crop up once another regime sets in, or there's a continuity of the one that has been in power. When will this mindset change, that it isn't about our ethnic cocoonism, but about a problem that affects the soul of the nation, as you have talked about, and the common good to set in place a government that has people full of integrity and who respect the Constitution?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very difficult question. I hope to provide a very difficult answer.
Yes,
please. I've always been tempted to play the devil's advocate. And in that temptation, my biggest challenge has always been, who is the devil? Finding the devil has been my biggest challenge in my temptation to play the devil's advocate. And I'm saying this because when, for instance, today, as a very dissatisfied, disenfranchised populace of young people in Kenya, we are questioning the way the systems are working. So now the immediate question that comes to mind, and to me as a person, is Kenya today because of the regime of William Samoei Ruto? Or Kenya is today because of the 64 regimes that Kenya has found itself in? That becomes the first dilemma that I have. And from that dilemma, then the next question comes, if we are to change Kenya today, and the initiatives of the young people, and we are supported by technology, for instance, then the question arises, are we going to change the mindset of the people first before even talking about changes at the ballot? And if we are to change the mindset of the people, then here comes even the generations that are spread within the five regimes. Exactly, the generations. And we have a generation, and I think 2 generations, especially from age 0 to 44, if we go by the generation having 22 years, and we have generations who believe in the status quo by all means. And these are the generations that are pro-stability, and these are the people who have invested in this country. And they have been in the all 844 system of government, of education. And we have a fresh generation that is cropping up, my generation, Melvin's generation, Ivy's generation, and this young generation now that is coming in to question. But remember, this goes back, as you've mentioned, to the sanctity and the power of the ballot of these young people to be able to exercise their democratic rights. But remember, our political contest is very tribal, number one, and it's very mad. It's influenced by money. And money is the mother's milk of politics, and that is the reality across the board. And remember, the voters are not the enlightened Ayub and the people in studio. The voter are the people in the streets, are the people in the villages, whom to them the most important thing is perhaps that 100 shillings that they'll be able to take on that particular day of voting. And that 100 shillings is most important to them as opposed to the decision this particular person is going to make. And that is why, again, it takes us back to, and you mentioned this earlier, expecting elections after every 5 years. And that becomes our biggest problem and challenge, because our elected representatives, they know that once I'm elected, I have 5 years to wait. And now the sovereignty of the voter is compromised, because if I have to vote and wait for 5 years, this person knows I have to just wait for 4 years, and then I go back to the ground. But now if you bring the idea of snap elections that we mentioned earlier, then that sovereignty remains alive and active, because the lawmaker or the person who's been elected, they know that any moment I can be called to an election.
Can be activated.
Absolutely.
At any given time. Yes, Tabi.
I think, Ayub, the issues around, bringing in leaders worth of integrity and even changing, the generation way of how we've voted in the past, that has resulted to the crop of leaders we've had and what we've had as systems and deliverables in terms of leadership, is a conversation that I think is very ripe to be had at this particular time, especially where our generation, we've come forward and, are giving alternative voices, that we are saying that, we have been known to, most of the time, not to vote. And you see right now, I've heard the politicians saying that, we are just making noise in the social media. And when it will come to the time when the votes are needed, our generation or the youth really do not go and vote. And I was telling them it will be very a foolish way of reasoning, allow me to say that, if that is the perspective and the way they are seeing this particular new cropping up and the conversation that the young people are having. If the young people could mobilize themselves across the whole country, set dates by themselves through social media, the new media, and go to the streets, and I think we cannot say that they did not really overturn this government, because they did enter parliament, and for some time parliament was not in functioning. So they overturned the legislature. You cannot sit down and say that it's going to be business as usual come 2027. So I think there is a need to relook into even the best ways that we can, even mobilize ourselves as young people so that at the end of the day, we are able to not just speak, but also actively participate in voting leaders who we will be proud of, leaders who bring the change we want, because we can say so much, but then we have the ultimate power to make change at the ballot. Allow me to weigh in on the system of governance that my fellow panelists have tried to, really, and I think that's a very ripe conversation coming from the young people, because the assumption has been that we are not up to date and awake in some of these things. BBI was here some years back. And one of the provisions in the BBI was on the executive hybrid system of government, where at least there was the provision that each region will have presentation, because we are addressing the issue of election violence and the court issues after every election. So then how do we bring people together? How do we bring everybody at the table where they feel representation is served? And if we were to look at that, then I think BBI will be a document that we could go and look into and see the positive aspects, especially when it comes to representation and what it offered is hybrid system of governance that will have ensured maybe that all the regions and their leaders are represented, so that somebody doesn't feel that the winners has it all, and then those people could not have something, just have their say at the end of the day. So I would think that it's time, really, Ayub, that as Kenya, we have to enact, and include some of these things in the constitution, such that also, if we could have such system of governance, then the youth will not just be speaking here every morning, then we will be also having an opportunity to have, our representation at the highest level of the arm of the government, that is executive, if we were to look at our system of government. But lastly, on that conversation again, is the issue around, the youth now, we are very keen actually on 2027 election. And I think, as what I'm hearing most of us say is, we want to vote also new blood. But then we have political parties. And you mentioned a very important point when you're speaking, Melvin, around what roles are youths in those political parties playing, such that as we speak about participation in governance processes and political processes, then even in the parties, they are not just there to be seen, but actually they are pushing from within. So it's a call upon the youth leagues in these parties, even in the party like ODM, and that they really have to now have conversations around how we can have increased political support for young people come 2027. Because I'm telling you for free that we cannot dismiss and say that we will rise and form political parties and these are parties which will take us to election. There is that still mindset, I'm telling you. Can you not form your own outfits? We can form our own outfits, but I will also say that we can bring change from within. Yes. And we can have this conversation in these other parties, because at the end of the day, we will form parties, but there will still be major parties, and we are still in those parties. Like me, I'm in a party. And the only thing I can say is that now we have to push from within these parties that even this conversation that we are having, they're translated into actionables, and we're able to get support. Because for a young person, really, and I'm telling you, when you'll go to, I come from Siaya County, when you'll go to the common mamamboga, as we say, and you tell them as a young person that, you see, me, I'm Melvin, and I'm coming to, and I want to be the member of parliament, let's say for Game where I come from. And me, all I have is a mindset that is going to bring transformational leadership. And I'm telling you, you don't have money to give these people. And it's a tall order for the young people. And that's why some of them cannot rise to the occasion. It's going to still be a bit of a challenge. So we have to get the political parties, support the youth involvement, and support them also to become leaders through actionables. Yes, Malvinia. Yes.
I'm thinking that Kenyans, as a collective, we lack shared values. We do not have something that anchors how we do our elections or how we want our leaders to behave, and that is the problem. Every 5 years, because every time it's someone comes with it's our time to eat. Every time it's my people. Every time it's somebody from our side. And I think once it comes to that, you forget what should have guided us throughout the five years that we were with this regime. And when it comes to that, and we forget ourselves, because first of all, we do not have what anchors us. We are here, we are there, we are not anywhere. And you just find yourselves electing anyone. And you see with, even now as we talk about an alternative system of governance, the people that we have in parliament, if you give them that today, they will still find a way to ruin it. They will still find a way to make it look that bad. So I think what we also need to do, let's maintain the outfits that we have, but can we institute structural and institutional changes? Can we talk about now values? Because without values, how do we expect a parliamentarian to behave? Without values, how do I expect my human rep to even talk to me? Because those are the challenges that we are seeing here today. And these things are being passed to the young people. If you go to the university today, the elections will be on ethnic basis. If you go to professional bodies, they will always be regrouping and saying, you know, we are from Gusii, we are from Gema, and whatnot. And then that comes, and it's a reflection of what we have in the national government. So if we do not start from where we are, and for the young people, I think we have done that, because when we said we are leaderless, we are partyless, and we are tribeless, we meant it. And that can be seen. Then the political class came, and now they want to start telling us about, this region has been isolated. This region is now being considered. And you can also hear the parliamentarian saying that, the other time we saw your people being sworn in, and do not think that we didn't feel bad about it. It's coming from them, and we need to annihilate that. We need to get rid of that so that after every 5 years, at least we can evaluate. Did we stand on the values and what we wanted these people to do? Or is it just about the unga for today? And I don't know. I want to think that what Kenyans go through is like childbirth. You forget it so fast, and then you go ahead and get many other kids. You forget the pain so fast that you do not remember that 2 years ago I went through this. And that is what we are also going through, that you do not remember how you couldn't afford healthcare. You do not remember how your child couldn't go to school and how you had to pay to get a bursary, and now you're electing the same people. And Ayub, if we do not build on alternative leadership right now in our institutions, then we are going to get the same crap that we are getting today.
How would you then build that alternative? When you say you are leaderless, you are tribeless, fine, but partyless, how then do you organize? I mean, you head to parliament through a political party. How then do you want to move this conversation forward, even as you create that alternative aspect? You must have a party, is it?
Yes, we must have a party, and I support parties because I'm also a member of a party. And the reason we came up with we are tribeless, partyless, and leaderless is because we had been betrayed. It was trauma manifesting because we have already trusted the parties that we were in. We trusted a new outfit that came into government, and they promised us heaven on earth, and then they failed. So this time, we were afraid that if we come up with an outfit and then we appoint leaders, they're going to do the same thing. They will be bought, or rather they will isolate themselves, become supreme leaders, and then, see the others as subjects. And that is what we were afraid of. But if today, we go through the changes that we've talked about here. If today we go back to our parties and tell them this is how we want this thing, and this is how, if we take on government as the next party, this is how we want the leadership to be done, then I think we can change. But I support. I mean, where we are right now, I do not see how we go there as individuals. I know we've had people succeeding as independent candidates, but that's not sustainable, and we need to organize ourselves.
Okay. Let's now turn our attention to another important development that happened this week. On Monday, Ivy, coming to you, we had seen the former DP Rigathi Gachagua, Kalonzo Musyoka, Eugene Wamalwa meeting for a possible political coalition. Too early, though. I mean, isn't this just a recycling of a majority KANU old guard who were molded by President Moi, some their proteges, including President Kenyatta, former, now President William Ruto, Kalonzo Musyoka, Moses Masika Wetangula, and the Wamalwa by extension. And isn't this not the right time for a rethink of young Kenyans looking at the developments and the behavior trends political of these parties, these players, and come up with something cogent and develop with the fast-paced developing and developments within the political party?
First of all, thank you so much for that question. It's true, it's actually quite early, first of all, for that. Second, one of the few things I actually want to take from what my brother said with regards to a change of old guards. The old guards, they're not still understanding that the system needs to change. It's a reformative system that needs to change. They're still not yet actually believing that young people are now the ones who are actually about to transition to take in that leadership. And this call looks like it's more of being scared a bit. They're being scared, so they're trying to reunite or regroup so that they can feel some sort of way to make them feel, you know, more powerful or more, which is okay. But at the end of the day, is it really solving the intricate issues? Is it really solving the corruption issues? Is it really solving the things that we are going through as a nation as of now? I don't think so. So where we are at right now with regards to whether they become a coalition, whether they become a what, this is not the time yet. The time for now is to understand the small, intricate problems, the health issues in the country, the food not being on the table, the homes that are not being given stipends, the social funds that needs to be even given to the homes that are for the less fortunate. These are the things that we should be concentrating on. The systems need to work for us before we got into the politics. So I feel like it's just a discrepancy for our young people. It's also a discrepancy for the country. It also shows that they also don't care about our feelings and what we're going through right now. Because why would you be forming coalitions right now when we still have so much bitterness from June 25th? Have we solved that issue? Have we solved the issues that the young people are crying about? We've not yet solved them. So really, I feel like it's a bit selfish. Because we need to actually first think, how can we create alternative motives so that we can be able to create a structure of governance that works for the young people, works for the country, works for the region? We are still not yet there. We need reforms, and these reforms are needed right now as urgent as today.
Mm-hmm. And Keno, certainly that regrouping was based on being the alternative to the current government when the elections come in August 2027. But how will you be the better alternative to this alternative?
Yeah. So the better alternative to this alternative, first I will give some little credit to the regrouping. And that is where I end. I just give the credit and part from them. I'm giving the credit. I'm giving the credit because I believe in the thinking of Aristotle when he says that man is a political animal and nature abhors a vacuum. So clearly there's a vacuum in our political spaces, and these gentlemen are trying to fill it by activating their political instinct. But be as it may, we have to agree in the revolutions that we have as a country, and I think there are three, largely spanning around 30 years. The first at independence, the second with the repeal of Section 2A of the Constitution, and the third with this Gen Z revolution. And I think it's important as we bring in the better alternative to the alternative, we have to agree that that alternative can only come through a paradigm shift in our political conversation and discourses. And how do we have this paradigm shift? And we'll go back to the 1991 when there was the repeal of Section 2A of the Constitution, when multi-party democracy was introduced in Kenya. It's unfortunate that that was a democratic, it was a democratic progress, but it was marred with a lot of democratic reversals in the sense that these political parties, they took the nature of tribe. For instance, if you were in Ford, you're either a Luya or a Luo. If you're in DP, you are typically a Kikuyu. If you're in KANU, largely a Kalenjin. But that has been our conversation for a very long time, and it has shaped our political landscape for like close to 30 years. Now here comes a third revolution with the young people who have the initiative. Now with this third revolution, for us to have a better alternative to the alternative then, we must rethink our political parties and ask ourselves, what is the biggest challenge? Because our politics is party politics. So what is this biggest monster in our political parties that has made it almost impossible for the young people to get their spaces, number one, and that has made it very easy for these old guards to regroup always. Because when they're coming to the political stock market, tribe is the tool of trade. So then that brings the issue of our political parties today is devoid of ideology. Our political parties today is devoid of ideology, and now this ideology cannot be driven by the old guards, because we have to give them credit that they are old, and their brains are tiring and they are winning out. So for us young people to expect the old generation to bring ideologies, a new way of thinking, I think we should manage our expectation to that end. But now that gives us...
Thabi argued that, for example, she subscribes to the ODM party.
Yes, yes.
And you have talked about the environment which is built around personalities.
Absolutely.
And the tool of trade being the interest and the ethnic aspect.
Absolutely.
How will the likes of Thabi and Melvania thrive within such setups?
Now the question will go back to them. They have to agree.
We'll answer.
Are they with the old guards or with the new guards? If they're with the old guards, then we say endelea kwa ODM. Okay. If they're with the new guards, then we have to say now, you have to dissolve being an ODM member with due respect to your ODM-ship. You have to dissolve being a Jubilee member with due respect to your Jubilee-ship. And then now we come together and say, as young people, what is this outfit that we want for ourselves moving forward? And number one marker of this outfit, which is a political party for the young people, should be ideology. So that moving forward, we should be debating. I would expect Rigathi Gachagua and Eugene Wamalwa and Kalonzo and Karua, when they come together, they're discussing the economic model that should be alive to the challenges the young people have today. They should be discussing the political model that will accommodate our realities as a third world, multi-ethnic democracy, for instance. I would expect them to say, William Samoei Ruto, you've given us SHA, you've given us this system of government, and under your presidency, we do not agree with it. This is our alternative. But they don't have that capacity, and we respect them. Maybe their energy died in the 90s when they were changing when they were fighting for the repeal of 2A. I think now the energy is with us, the young people, and I believe, and even after this conversation, Ayub, we should be able to now move forward and ask, how are we introducing ideology in our politics? And I believe if that becomes the conversation that we're having as young people, it might not happen today, it might not happen next year, it might not happen even before 2027. But I believe 3 years is a very short time in the life of a nation, and the next 3 years we can do incredibly a lot. So we have to first bring ideology as that cogent something that you talked about in our political discourse. Yes,
Thabi. There was a question that was thrown your way by...
That was such a pertinent question. Yeah. First of all, like I said, Ayub, the biggest, I think, disconnect and problem we have is that as youths in these parties, we don't get to bring these alternative voices. We are more of yes people, and we just want to take what we are given without questioning, without asking, why is our gender not included and whatnot. So for me, I believe that, this is my opinion, that it's not about me going and forming another party. And with all due respect, we will need so much parties because Kenya is a democratic country. And it will be such a good thing that I hear we have an Inject Party of Kenya. We can have another Gen Z Party of Kenya, and so many. It's offering alternative to representation and also an outfit that aligns with the ideology. So I will entirely say that myself, I am okay voicing alternative voices in my party as ODM party, and I'm happy that they're taking it and they're listening to the young people in the party. And I'm telling you that in the forthcoming elections and even subsequently moving forward, we'll be able to see some of these things implemented, because for me, I am not somebody who can gag her mind. I speak my mind. And I'm happy that that is taken as such. So please, Ken, it's very nice that we need to form so many parties so that we give alternative to the young people. But if you can also just get into these parties that are already existing, voice your complaints, let's talk about this conversation, let them also, give the youth the platform to not just be heard, but also to actively participate and get these results out. That is something that also they can do. And I think they are also advancing. They are hearing what you're saying, and they are going to implement it in the party. So also, it begs the question that now that the political parties are grouping, same monkeys, same old ways, same old things. That is what we had. And in fact, I expected better from these Gachagua, Eugene, and this other people outfit. I really thought, and it's very wrong, by the way, for them to also, have this outfit, and they want to ride on the idea of Gen Zs, that they are the representative of the Gen Zs, they are the people whom are listening to the Gen Zs, and yet even in their regrouping, we are not seeing young people, even being in the first seats and even the first conversations about what Kenya needs. And as Ivy rightly put it, it's not about right now Eugene Wamalwa and
did the ODM party prioritized young Kenyans in your view when it donated 4 of its members to cabinet portfolios?
I'll rightly think that it's a problem with us, the young people, maybe in ODM. And of course, we did not donate for any of a young person in the four to the cabinet. Yeah. But then that doesn't mean that...
Would it have been prudent, at least, for one to be a member?
It should have actually been very prudent. And it's not that we have not raised it. And that's why I said our concerns, have been taken into account. And as a party, we are going to see some of these things put in consideration, because I will not move out of ODM because I was not included as a CS. But I can have an opportunity, because I've raised it and I've said that it's not just enough for me to be an ODM youth in the ODM party, but we also like that our experienced youth in the party to be given such slots. And I hope in the forthcoming appointments and whatnot, through this broad-based government, that more youths from ODM or even those other parties, and even these parties that are being formed out of the young people, it's not just a matter of ODM and UDA alone. Let even alternative voices that are not in parties be given opportunity, not just the young people in ODM. Everybody should have a chance. Every young person should have a chance, especially if they merit. Meritocracy should come, I think, should come first, even more than political alignment and even and party. So I think my finishing statement on this would be that we have not yet seen a political formation as per now, and not even this of recent, that is speaking to the interests of Kenyans, like Ivy said, that is speaking to the future that really us we are envisioning. Okay. It's just tribal politics, and it doesn't even represent the face of Kenya, so we still have a long way to go. You see, they have kept, and with all due respect, they've kept saying that the president is a tribal chief. But then they kept saying that the appointments will only be given to one community and whatnot. That is a conversation they were having. Okay. But what are they doing different? Because if they want to be the president in 2027 in the elections, then they ought to do better than just grouping as tribes and whatnot. Okay. There has to be something different in terms of what they want to do.
Yes, Melvin.
Yes. I'm surprised that people actually looked at that regrouping and thought something of them, because I paid them no mind, because I thought, you cannot be the alternative, and it's because we have seen them. Do you know how long I have seen Kalonzo in this in the political corridors and even holding positions? It cannot be that they are the ones who are the alternative voice, and it cannot be that they stand there as a few men and then expect that we will get behind them and offer them our support. We young people want the influence, we want accommodation, and we want our voices heard. And someone said that we have not given alternatives. I think we have given alternatives, and we have been very, very clear, even in our demands, in saying that this is what we want. But they've been deaf, and that's the problem. And as we go back to these political parties, are we saying that the political parties belong to certain men and women? Because that is the only way, sorry, don't know what's happening. Because that's the only way we would sit back and say that, please next time do this, please next time do this. We should be able to stop them in their tracks. They shouldn't even proceed with all these arrangements that we see them make. We don't know who sits on this table when they make these plans, and where they even get the idea that we support them to run. Because the alternative cannot be the political cousins. It cannot be the same political relatives that we've had. What we want brought to the table is, as a party, you've heard that this is what the Kenyans want. And this isn't just about young people. I don't think access to healthcare is a problem of the young people alone. Access to education isn't just a problem of the youth. This has to be inclusive. And if we are going back to the people, then we cannot sit in boardrooms and assume that we've already identified their issues. And identifying their issues does not mean that we have the solution that they need. So are we going back to the people again to get these solutions? Because I will consider a political party that does that. I will consider a political party that is in tandem with what the people want. And
is that the case for the Jubilee Party?
It is, actually. I think you haven't seen us in this way. You haven't seen us regrouping and saying that, as Jubilee Party, we want a coalition with this, because we are on the ground doing the work. What we want to do is, we want to know, do the Kenyan people want us? because we do not want to be an illegitimate government. We don't want to form a government where the people do not want us and every day it's just chaos and chaos. So we are going back to the people and we want to know what the people want. We also want them to support what we offer as leadership. So while we sit, I want to challenge Tabby. Do not just say that next time you hope.
Yeah.
Go and tell them.
I did.
Go and tell them. Go and stand and tell them this is what we want. Because why didn't they have any female appointees, by the way?
Let me just make it clear, because it seems it's a recurring question, yes?
Yeah.
Like I told you, ODM is a party that allows for opinions, and they listen. Myself, I particularly told my senator, Dr. Buru Ginga, who is my mentor, and I told him it's time that as a party and as leaders, it's time that the young people of the party of ODM not just be looked at as any other youth. Let them be given, especially if they merit. You see, the other day I was talking to a professor friend of mine, Jojo Uta, and he was telling me that being a youth sometimes comes with the entitlement feel that it's because of age that you're supposed to give me this and that. I don't think that's true. But as that will be, that when there are senior appointment positions in government and we have slots to also contribute our experts, we don't lack those experts in ODM as youth and as women. And that was taken into account. So Melvin, I did not say hoping. I actually had a conversation and it was taken into account. Maybe, just maybe, you might see the evidence very soon. And I'll tell you for free that ODM is a party that listens, so yeah.
Okay, they listen and they should also judge, or at least they should act.
True, yes.
So, but Ayub, I think we as young people have a lot to offer, but I also want to challenge us to not sing and dance to the same songs that our for instance, Tabby's mentor is Oburu, and yes. I do not want us to sing the same songs that they have been singing. We should be able to come up with diverse views and ideologies and new ideas of how to take Kenya forward.
Yes, Ivy, taking the conversation forward here.
Okay, so just to maybe add on to the point of my brother here, Keno, about ideologies, we need to really pay attention to what ideologies are we talking about here. To be specific, I would have one in mind, and that is bread is always sacred and it should not be taxed. Mm-hmm. That is one of the ideologies that should, be in the system, be in the constitution, be something that is being sung, that it even becomes a song. So, these are the kind of fragments, these ideologies, we need to take them one by one. What is it can guide our constitution? What is it that can guide us as a nation? What is it can guide us as an inclusive society so that we can all go together going in front? Because I believe that our societies have become so belligerent because of how we have even grown up in our societies, even in the homestead. What are you being taught? What values? Coming back to what Melvin said, what are the values you're being taught when you're from the family home? What are the values? Are you being told to steal? Are you being taught to? Those are the values. It all comes down to the society and to the home fragment. What are the values are you instilling in your children? What are you telling them is good? What are you telling them that they should do as they grow up? Because even the Bible says, teach your child as they're young, so as they grow, they may not depart from it. Because as a society, we've become corrupt because each of us are corrupt because we have literally fed into this corruption. It's become part of us. Yeah. So I'm not going to blame anyone here because it has to start from the home. It starts from the society. It starts from the people. And it starts within the value system. The value system of a country matters. How we are viewed as a nation matters. Because if one person is corrupt, then all of us are corrupt. So it all narrows down to that. What are the intricate ideologies that we can strive for as a nation? And I believe that this is my parting shot, and I believe that this is something that we should consider as the young people going forward. Thank you, Ayub.
Okay. Yes, Keno, before I sample the feedback, you had a thought?
No, I'm easy, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So given what Ivy, Melvin and Tabby have pointed out, having the conversation around the soul of our nation, is it so paramount at this given time that it should be multi-sectoral, voices that include the youth, the political establishment, the religious leaders, and the other thinkers around how we can better our country?
Okay, thank you. And maybe to make a comment about the ODM and Jubilee representative here, just as I delve into that.
Yes.
I don't know if they're speaking in their capacity as representative of ODM or in their personal capacity. If they are speaking in their capacity as representative of ODM and Jubilee, then I find these parties to be very utopian in the sense that it's only focusing on what ought to be. But now they're doing that at the expense of what is, because the reality is there is no position of a young person in ODM, there's no position of a young person in Jubilee, aside from just appearing on TV shows and trying to propagate the ideology of the party. But be as it may, when we talk about the soul of the nation, I'm bringing that because that is the reality we are in, not the utopian thinking of ODM and Jubilee, or I don't know if it's their personal positions.
Ayub, Keno definitely has no idea what's happening in our parties.
Yes,
and I think it's unfair for him to just come and say that we are appearing on media to defend the parties. I mean,
and the parties didn't send us this morning.
Did you ask?
Yes.
Because I was invited here as a lawyer, yes.
Oh, I thought
and I'm a part.
If the party didn't send you, then I take back my sentiments.
I am a part of Jubilee.
As the representative of the party.
ODM did not send me here this morning, but I believe in my party.
Yes.
And so for me, you cannot,
I take back my sentiments respectfully.
You cannot want...
he has taken.
I take back my sentiments respectfully.
But allow me to submit this respectfully, Ken, that... as Kenyans and as young people, I understand that we really want different, and we want also the new ways of doing things in terms of even regrouping and political parties formation. But then you should not be bashing the people who already are into, they have aligned themselves. And me, I have no problem being in ODM. And I'm telling you, the conversations we are bringing around even change. These are conversations that even as a party, we are willing and they are willing to adapt to. So I'm here representing the capacity of Tabitha Gutu, somebody who believes that I need to be in a party, even if it's not a politician, it's my democratic right.
Yes.
It's such a requirement that I have to align and know what happens in my political party. So
yes,
it's just
let him now proceed.
Thank you, Tabitha. That distinction was important so that I don't accuse ODM for your personal sentiments. But yeah, you know, I believe there are different sectors of our society today that are affected differently by what's happening today, what we call now what is in our politics. We have the clergy, for instance. We have the civil society, we have the citizens who are the voters. So I think all the sectors in our society has to be considered. Their sentiments and opinions has to be put in consideration so that as we are looking for the alternative voice, let that voice be reflective of every other person who considers themselves part of the people, part of the state. So I believe it has to be a multi-sectoral conversation. And we are all in Kenya. We all know where the shoes pinches, and I believe we can move forward together in a very democratic manner, in a very peaceful way, within the law. Because remember, rule of law means everybody is within the law. And I think there is this illusion where people think that the rule of law means the government is above the law, or the government can be hit at any time, and the citizen, because they donated their power to the government, then the people are above the government. I think the rule of law says everybody is within the law. Everybody is bound by the law of the land. If you violate, there is a system and structures that has to bring you to account.
Yeah, and we are all equal before the same law.
Yes.
Let's sample the feedback here on the broadcast. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. We sample a few as we come to the close of the show. Bob Otieno says it's disheartening how young Kenyans who are abducted and only their bodies to be found at morgue dead when we are still fresh with the KWS officer saga at Naivasha. Rafi_Festa says the youth are the alternative voice and 2027 is our time to make it count. Let's stand out in full force and remove these ineffective politicians. We must rise, vote decisively and replace these failing politicians with leaders who we truly deserve. Jai Musoma says it's so devastating to see Mlolongo for abducted youth who were critics of government and found dead in city mortuary the same day the Inspector General of Police and DCI boss appeared in court. The common denominator is that they all had alternative voices. Sad state of affairs. Bob Jamua says sad and unfortunate that youths are killed for airing their voices. This shows that there is a great impact and the status quo has been rattled. The youth should not shy off. Talal_Kilel says the future is shaped by the voices of today. Youth must be at the forefront of politics, advocating for a world that reflects their values and vision. Babu Michael says, Ayub, as we look for an alternative voice, these voices have already been silenced, literally by the abductions and killings. From the Gen Z's protest till now, many youthful voices have been silenced by this regime. Where will this voice come from? Samuel Owu says, I tried explaining to someone around his early 50s why Gen Z is against abduction and lack of accountability. He told me that this has always been the case since colonialism and that we will never succeed in addressing it. The final one here, Sir Nixon Dugure says, may our good God bless the Gen Z's unwavering effort to breathe some meaningful life into our nation. May His Excellency, may He enable them to stay on the course, saying no to distractors. Amen. We'll have some 1.5 minutes. So each one of you 30 seconds. Ivy, starting with you.
Okay. One of the few takeaways that I would like to air out today is that we need to move from a state of mind or a state of mindset of agony and bitterness to a state of mind of what is it we can do for our people or for the state, or what is it that we can be able to achieve, especially as a young people, so that we can also help our predecessors to understand that change is inevitable, because in the midst of chaos, there is opportunity. And the opportunity is the young people at the forefront trying to change the narrative. The narrative needs to change. So I want to urge every young person out there right now that it's not about the violence, it's not about how to call out everybody for doing their wrong, but how can we now change our mindset to pointing fingers to now what is it that we can be able to do going forward so that we can all change and grasp ourselves to become the next changed generation, to create opportunities for the next generation that's coming. I believe that these are the conversations we need to have, and the alternative voice is actually one of the few things that needs to be said.
Yes, Keno, 30 seconds.
Thank you. Fellow young people and fellow citizens of Kenya, today the topic of discussion is the alternative voices, and I'm going to take it as a personal initiative, because most of the time as young people we expect the other person to take action. We expect the government to take action.
Okay.
So I'm going to take it as a personal initiative to have these alternative voices with regard to our governance structure and the constitutional conversation, and I'm going to bring it to all the spaces where our young people are. The President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, you asked for an alternative from the young people, aside from online bullying and the shaming, and of course even the storming of Parliament. So the alternative here is what we are giving you. Number one alternative, we are saying we are sick and tired of the pure presidential system of government. It's not working. So we just have a parliamentary system in the form of breadbust, in the form of handshake. So we just want these things in government to give us some sort of order and predictability.
Yes, Tabi.
Thank you.
Ayub, very briefly, mine is to the President, and this is my submission, that Mr. President, it's not that the youth of this country do not want you. What we want from you is exactly what your office represents. That is service delivery. That is a president who listens and makes sure that the pressing issues of the youth, that is unemployment, we would like to see initiatives that really, programs of government that are really gearing towards addressing unemployment, because this is the biggest problem that the young people have. Mr. President, it's not a good thing that young people are abducted and killed every day. I mean, these are children of, and they have families and they have a future. We are killing the future of our nation if we'll continue to kill these young people. And do you know that these voices, these are the voices of the future leaders. So then we cannot have future leaders if we cannot mentor that. So, Mr. President, my plea to you is protect the greatest resource you have in this country, and that is the young people.
Thank you.
And listen to them.
Yes, Melvin.
Yesterday, 2 bodies of the people we've been looking for were discovered dead, and we still have so many more who are missing. I want you to always remember that this was a way to silence our voices, and I want us to always remember that it is because of our power that we scared them off and they're killing us using the apparatus that we lent them. As we continue looking for our comrades, I want us to keep on organizing. Let us not give up. This is our country. This is our home. There's nowhere else that we are going. We are going to organize, and we are going to take our power back. Where you are as powerful as you want to be, and Kenyans as a collective, we can beat this.
Thank you. Much appreciated for your times here. Ivy, thank you. Keno, thank you so much for your time. Melvin, thank you. And Tabi, thank you. And thanks to you too for waking up with us here on the broadcast, and much appreciated for your feedback. Of course, many, but we could only sample a few in the course of the broadcast. Up next is Level Up, and it's the Gospel edition, being the last Friday of the month of January 2025, and DJ Gigi. Not sure whether that Gigi stands for Glory, Glory, Man United, or in football terms, whether is Ibra says he's a Manchester City fan, so probably one of a disgruntled former Man United neighbour who has just moved on to the blue side of the city in the UK. Nonetheless, though he may also be a goaler when he's putting his bet, he'll be up next year with the Level Up Gospel edition this Friday here on the broadcast. And lovely to have been with us this entire week. We don't take that, of course, for granted. And many thanks for your feedback here, the observations and the clarifications that you sought. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week here on the broadcast. Good morning.